And we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome.
Hello, everyone.
We already have 7 people, 8 people, 12 people. So good. So as people are connecting, let us explain what's going on here. We are streaming from our own homes because we have a very special program today. It's Erev Tisha BeAv, is the eve of the Tisha BeAv, the 9th day of the Hebrew calendar, the month of Av, and lots of things happen there. We are going to explain as we go. But first we need to do Mincha and Mariv, and for that you're going to need the Siddur. If you don't have a copy with you, you can download it from our website, www.szwinnipeg.ca. And then you are going to find the Siddur. The file is called Siddur for Afternoon and Evening Services Weekdays. Then you can download it or read it from the screen. 2 options. The chat is open. I can read your messages. Interesting. Nobody wrote anything yet.
But I can't see the chat from the way we set it up. So if there's good messages, you have to share them with me, okay, Rabbi?
But you could do it.
I could do it? Well, how could I do it?
You have to open it.
Oh. Okay.
Yehuda Cherny is here. I miss his accent.
Beautiful.
Yehuda.
Are you ready to start, Rabbi? Should we start?
I remember Yehuda said, Boker Tov.
Yes. Except that's not what we say here.
That's okay, but that's what I remember, right? Okay,
we say buenos tardes.
Buenas tardes. Thelma is here. Okay, so let's start with Mincha service.
You want me to call pages for you, Rabbi?
Please.
We begin, as Rabbi said, the website, winnipeg.ca, has our Siddur, and it is for weekday afternoons. Mincha. We're going to do Mincha and Mariv, afternoon and evening services, back to back. But remember, from Mincha to Mariv, we switch days on the calendar. So we start with Mincha, page 120, Ashrei. פותח ידיך, משפיע ברצון. ואנחנו ארצנו, הללויה.
תהילת אדוני ידבר, פיו יברך כל בשר, שם קודשו לעולם ועד, ואנחנו נברך יה, מעתה ועד עולם, הללויה.
Page 121, יתגדל ויקדש חצי קדש.
יתגדל ויתקדש ימרבה. ברמה יברח חירותי וימליך מלכותי. בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי כל בית ישראל. בעגלה ובזמן קריב ויאמרו אמן. יש מרבה מבורך לעלם ולעלמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח. ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שם קודשה בריחו. לילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירם בעלמא ויאמרו אמן.
Amidah for Mincha begins on page 122b, which includes the imahot, the matriarchs, as well as the patriarchs. We will do this in the style Eicha Kedusha, singing out loud wherever you are with Rabbi Mas, until we get to the end of Kedusha, L'dor V'dor.
Let's see, you were going with an echo. I think I took the echo away right now. Can you say something?
You had me with an echo?
Yeah, it's Roy Matthews sounded okay now?
Do I still have an echo? Echo? Is it better? Amidah. We're going to do the Amidah.
Yep. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'leavoteinu Eloi Avraham v'Yitzchak v'Eloi Yaakov Eloi Sarah Eloi Rivka Eloi Rachel v'Eloi Leah האל הגדול הגיבור נורא אל עליון גומל חסדים טובים וקונע הכל וזוכר חסדי אבות ומביא גואל לבני בניהם למען שמו ואהבה מלך כוסר ופוקד ומושיע ומגן ברוך אתה אדוני מגן אברהם ופוקד שרה אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני מחיים את אימת הרב להושיע מוריד הטל מכלכל חיים בחסד מחיים עדים ברחמים רבים סומך נופלים ברופא כל יום מתיר אסורים ומקיים אמונתו לישני עפר מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומדמה לך מלך ומתמך ומצמיח ישועה ואין אמרתה לחיות מתים ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים
נקדש זה ואמר
נקדש את שמך בעולם כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום ככתוב על יד נביאך וקרא זה אל זה ואמר
קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות מלוך על הארץ כבודו
קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות מלוך על הארץ כבודו לעומתם ברוך יאמרו
ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו
ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו בדברי קודשך כתוב לאמור
ימלוך אדוני לעולם אלוהי ציון לדור ודור הללויה
ימלוך אדוני לעולם אלוהי ציון לדור ודור הללויה לדור ודור נגיד קודלך ולנצח נצח עם קדושתך נקדיש ושבחך אלוהינו בפני עולם ושלם ועד כי אל מלך גדול וקדוש אתה ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש
אמן אתן חונן לרבן חוננו מלך צלחנו ברוך אתה ישראל ותן ברכה ופנאי למאבס בין בשנתי שלנו רב ז'נהים ברוך אתה נגמס לכם ישראל שיבה שלי נגמר שנה ויעצנו כבקור עצנו ואגנו נפל מקום ונתנו ברוך אתה סבחני נכון צעקה משפט כבר משנים אל תהיה כתב אחר ברוך אתה שווה אבים ומלך איזה דין And some of the leader, Shma kohen on I was racking away.
מאוד אם אנחנו לך
Modim anachnu al shadar levatinu. Al kol virgin. Baruch Adonai Elohim Chavafinu Adonai. Shalom Rabbi Yisrael Chava Kol Shedaval Tzinu Olam. Yata Uno Adonai Kol Shalom Taberach V'Rachel Chai Yisrael Kol Kol B'Shema. Al Yisrael B'Shalom. Amor Hai Mitzvah Shem. Oseh Shalom B'Mamav V'Yaseh Shalom Avinu Kol Yisrael V'Emru Amen. I never knew, Rabbi, or I never thought how as if I said that properly, Jewish Spiritual Leaders Institute, which is the program that Rabbi Anibal and I did. Well, I guess we started 4 years ago, and we graduated. We got smicha 3 years ago. And for every one of our classes, we had to take turns, and we always started with, it was Mariv. Was it Mincha? It was Mariv. It was Mariv. We used to start with Mariv. And it was weird. I remember thinking that 4 years ago, it's weird to do davening like this. And then here we are a few years later, and this has been the norm. Usually we're in the synagogue, though this is a unique circumstance, but davening from home, davening into the computer, this is what we did for our online learning, and it's paying off. If you're completed the silent Amidah, you may be seated for a moment as Rabbi Mas continues with us, page 134, Kaddish Shalom.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה.
Amen.
גלמה דברה חירותי, וימליך מלכותי ויקייכנו יום יכנו בחטא כל את ישראל, וגלוס מנכרי וימרו.
Amen.
יש מרבה מבורך, לעלם ולעלמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ותרום ותרום ותנשא ותדר ותדל על שמי קודשה. בריחו לאלה מכל כתב ושידתה, תושבי כתב ולקמת אדם על מבי ימרו. אמן. התקבל צלותנו ובנות לכל ישראל, קודם אבון דבשמיה וימרו. אמן. יש למה רבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל וימרו. אמן. עושה שלום במרומה, והוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל וימרו. אמן.
Page 135, עלינו.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי ארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות אדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא.
שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסר הארץ. כן, לקבל אחד, אני לא יודע.
ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
We conclude Mincha with a recitation of Kaddish Yatom, the mourner's Kaddish, which can be found on page 136. All those in mourning and observing a yortzeit are invited to rise. We are concluding the 8th day in the Hebrew month of Av. And on the 8th of Av, we commemorate the following yortzeits at Congregation Shared Zedek. Risa Beckelman, Risa Bat Yitzchak V'Gitel, Maggie Brownstone, Machla Bat Yaakov, David H. Ludwig, David Hillel ben Meir, Beverly Nord, Batsheva Bat Avram Vesara, Sylvia Peacock, Richard Rosenblatt, David ben Yehuda Sheva, Harry Schaefer, Tzvi ben Yisrael, Israel Silverman, Yisrael Yitzchak ben Naftuli Hertz, Susan Carol Stern, Sarah Chaim, Bat Eliezer Halevi, Ruth Thompson, Razel Bat Aharon Uperel. And from One More Candle, that's the organization who wants names of all the 1.5 million children who perish in the Holocaust to be read by assigning one name for each day of the calendar. For the 8th of Av, from One More Candle, we have Hedviga Duchova, all of blessed memory. If there is anyone with a yortzeit for the 8th of Av, for Mincha, whose name we have not said, please type it into the chat. We'll allow a few moments for the delay. And if there are any names, Rabbi Mas can add them before we continue with the mourner's Kaddish in just a moment on page 136.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה.
Amen.
בעלמא דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי, וחייכון וביומכון וחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן.
Amen.
יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעלם ולעולמי עלמיה.
Amaya.
יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו.
Brichu.
לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושידתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירם בעלמה ואמרו אמן.
Amen.
יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
Amen.
עושה שלום ממרומיו ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
Amen. We make the transition now, symbolically, because of our standardized prayer times, to the next day. From the 8th of Av, we turn the clock now to the 9th of Av. And since all of our new days begin with the Arvit, the Marif, the evening service, we invite you to join with us as Rabbi Mas continues leading. Arvit, Marif, the evening service begins on page 137. You are invited to rise for the call to worship. Baruch.
והוא רחום יכפר אפו ולא ישחית, וירבה להשיב אפו ולא יאיר כל חמתו. אדוני יושיע מלך ימינו ויום קורנו, ברכו את אדוני המבורך.
Baruch Adonai Borach Leolam Vaed.
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד.
You may be seated. We continue silently through the first of two paragraphs before the Shema. Rabbi will pick up the davening at Uma'avir Yom. in just a moment.
ומעביר יום ומביא לילה ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה אדוני צבאות שמו. אל חי וקיים תמדים לא חלנו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני המעדי ורבי.
Amen.
אהבת עולם בית ישראל.
Continuing the bottom paragraph, page 137.
כי הם חיינו ורק ימינו והם נגעי יומם ולילה, ואהבתך אל תסור ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל.
Amen. Page 138. Let's cover our eyes for the Shema.
שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך.
We continue silently through the Shema. There are three paragraphs. You can work through the Hebrew or the English, beginning on page 138 and concluding on page 130.
וים שמות תשמעו ולמסות. אדוני אלוהיכם אמת, ואמונה כל זאת וקיים עלינו.
We're on page 139, continuing now the transition from the Shema to the Mi Chamocha.
ומלכותו ורצון קיבלו עליהם משה ובני ישראל, לכנו שירה, ושימך רבה ואמרו כולם. מי כמוך אבל אדוני, מי כמוך נדר וקודש, נורת עילות אוסף אלה. מלכותך רע ומניך בו כי הים לפני משה, זה העלינו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר כיפת אדוני את יעקב, וגאלו מיד קצק ממנו. ברוך אתה אדוני
Shmo.
גאל ישראל.
Amen. Page 140, Hashkivenu.
אשכיבנו אדוני שלום עמיד מלכנו לחיים.
ופרוס עלינו שגר שבח ותק מהם בעצת ולמבנך.
ושמור צאתנו ונלכם לשלום אתה ועד עולם, ברוך אתה אדוני,
Shemo.
שומר עמו ישראל לעד. ברוך אדוני.
Amen. Continuing silently with next bracha, still page 140.
מקצות הנפלאות אתה לבדיך. ברוך נא ויום ברוך נא בלילה ברוך שם לקום.
אשר בידו נפש כל חי ורוח כל בשר איש, ככה ידרכי. Page 141, there's a gray box, כי המלכות שלך היא.
כי המלכות שלך היא, ולעולמיה תמלוך בכבוד, כי לנו מלך אלהת, ברוך אתה אדוני.
שמו.
המלך וכבודו תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד, ועל כל מעשיו.
Amen. חצי קדש, page 141.
התגדל והתגדל שמרבה, בעלמא דברי במליך מלכותי, וכיכונו ביום אחד, ובחיית כל את ישראל וכל הזמן גרים מרו, אמן. יהא שם רב מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עלמיה, יתברך וישתבח, ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנצב ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שם קודשה בריחו. לעילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמידם בעלמא וימרו, amen.
The Chatzi Kaddish is always a signal that something big is coming. In this case, it precedes the Amidah for Arvit, the evening service Amidah, as we've now turned to the new day, the 9th of Av, as we know, Tisha B'Av, the saddest and the spiritual low point on our Jewish calendar. The Amidah for Arvit is always a completely silent Amidah. So, if you are comfortable, we invite you to rise for the Amidah, the standing prayer. You can begin in 142a or 142b, using the patriarchs only or patriarchs with matriarchs, depending on your choice. And then following through again in the Hebrew or in the English, or taking this opportunity to use your own words of prayer. Let's take a few minutes now for the silent Amidah. Don't forget, as you're working through, there is a special inclusion for Tisha B'Av when you get to it, if you are following through the Siddur. It is on page 145, I believe.
Wow, it's nice to see so many people connected. We have, let's see, Yehuda, Thelma, Joshua, Alan, Terry, Rinal Baz, Shelly Chochinov, Alice and Bill Weisman, Ari Litvak, my colleague from Mexico, Gloria Perdomo, Terry, Yerach. Very nice. Marilyn Pearl. Yep. Okay.
You ready to continue, Rabbi?
Yes, I am.
We have the Kaddish Shalem on page 149. Ordinarily, if we were together in shul, we would do Eicha before the concluding Aleinu and the concluding Mourner's Kaddish. Here we're gonna complete the Ma'ariv service, and then we're gonna do our special Eicha program for the scroll of Eicha, the scroll of Lamentations, immediately following. So you may, if you're very savvy, you may notice the notes in the Siddur, and you may think, "What are the rabbis doing?" But don't panic. This is all planned. So now, page 149, Kaddish Shalem. Amen.
בעלמא דברי חירותי וימליך מלכותי וחיכון יום יכון ובכת כל בית ישראל והגלו זמן גרי וימרו.
Amen.
יש מרבה מבורך לעלם ולעלמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ותרום ותנשא ותדר ותדל על שם קודשה. בריחו לעין למקור חטא ושידתה, תוש וחטא ונחמתה תמיד עמל וימרו.
Amen.
התקבל צלותנו ודעון דכל ישראל קודם עוון בשמיה וימרו.
Amen.
יש למה רבם שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל וימרו.
Amen.
עושה שלום ממרומיו ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל וימרו. Amen.
Page 140. I invite you to rise. 150, pardon me, for Aleinu.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי ארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות אדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא.
עונות השמיים כיסד הארץ, כמו שבקרוב בשמיים. הנה תזור ונזונים,
ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
Our Arvit service concludes on page 151 with the mourner's Kaddish Kaddish Yatom. All those in mourning and observing a yard site are invited to rise, as well as anyone else who would like to follow the custom we've had at Shered Zedek for a number of years now, keeping in mind there are many people, never mind in the world, but in our community alone, who have no one to say Kaddish for them. And so if you would like, we have this custom that we all stand together and say Kaddish together. But the yard sites for the 9th day in the Hebrew month of Av. Shifra Apter, Shifra bat Eliezer, Ed Kaplan, Eli ben Kass, Eliyahu ben Chaim Avrum, Sarah Hollenberg, Sarah bat Yeshayahu, David Marshall Paul, Melech Mendel ben Baruch Tevye ve'Esther, Isaac Plattner, Yitzchak ben Shmuel, Ruth Rubenstein, Rivka bat Eliezer v'Shena, Nellie Schindelman, Nechama bat Motel v'Leah, Morris Starr, Moshe ben Zalman Ber. And from one more candle, for the 9th of Av, Chaim Diamond, all of blessed memory. Also this past week, we mourn the passing and honor the memory of Cookie Elkin, Rochochana bat Laser Udvora, and of Pamela Wolson, Panina bat Ephraim Halevi Ve'etel, both of blessed memory. If there's anyone with a yahrzeit for the 9th of Av whose name we have not said, we'll allow a few moments for the chat. Please type it in. Otherwise, Rabbi will continue for us with a concluding Mourner's Kaddish on page 151.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה.
Amen.
וילמד דברי חירותי וימליך מלכותי, וחייכון ויומכון וחיי דכל בית ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן.
Amen.
יהא שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי דקודשה בריחו. לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירם בעלמא ואמרו אמן.
Amen.
יהא שלמה רבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
Amen.
עושה שלום ממרומיו ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
Amen. Yasher Koach, Rabbi Ani Bamas.
ישר כוח רבי לייבל.
You did a wonderful job. Thank you for leading us through Mincha and Mari. Thank you to everyone who has participated. Now we've just hit 6:30, 6:32, and we are ready to continue with what makes tonight different from all other nights. No. It's not. It just, tonight is different from all other nights, as it is now Tisha BeAv. And it is our custom to chant Megillat Eicha at this time. Over a month ago, when Rabbi Mas and I were talking about what were we going to do for Tisha B'Av, specifically for Megillat Eicha, given these pandemic times, it's not the most popular service, believe it or not, to begin with. But we thought that this strange new world in which our services are virtual and our minyan is done online might afford us an opportunity to bring a little bit of attention to Tisha B'Av, and specifically the powerful and beautiful, though quite mournful, reading of Megillat Eicha that so many people, for whatever reason, maybe it's the summer, maybe it's the middle of the week, maybe there are other things that are on their radars, but for whatever reason, isn't such a popular and well-attended service. This, hopefully, with a little bit more convenience, will shine a light on something that really is very, very important and long-standing in the history of the Jewish people. As you probably know, Tisha B'Av is the date that commemorates the destruction of both the first temple at the hands of the Babylonians and the second temple at the hands of the Romans, as well as a host of other calamities that befell the Jewish people throughout history. Expulsion from different countries in Europe, like England and Spain, signed on this day. And even going back to the Torah, the sages, the Midrash, says that the report of the spies, the negative report brought by the 10 spies that actually turned the community against Moses and the plan to go into Israel, was delivered on Tisha B'Av.
Yeah,
for this reason, very sad day.
That
Rabbi.
was sad. I know actually that the Midrash said that when the spies came back, the people cried. And God said, because you're crying for no reason, I will give you a reason to cry. That's it's harsh. It's a harsh Midrash. That's
as a result, we mark this day in many different ways. With sunset on Tisha B'Av, we have one of only two full day sunset to sunset fasts. Yom Kippur is the other one, and there are other signs of Tisha B'Av that fit a day of intense mourning, fasting being a big part of it. When we read Eicha, it's quite customary to sit on the ground, on cushions, or even directly on the floor. Again, our lowness, our low position. Sometimes the meal before Tisha B'Av has certain mournful qualities to it, much like a meal of consolation, where eggs are served. One of the most interesting things about Tisha B'Av, the day, is that things are flipped, as if the day is so sad that we're totally upside down. In the morning, we don't wear talit or tefillin, but we do for mincha in the afternoon. Just one of the things. So Tisha B'Av has a lot of ritual associated with us with it designed to really intensify and highlight the low feeling, the sadness of the day and everything, all of the suffering it symbolizes and commemorates. Eicha, reading Megillat Eicha, which comes from the Ketuvim section of the Tanakh, or as my Baba was telling me over the weekend, Chesuvim, the writings, Torah, Nevi'im, Chesuvim, Ketuvim, the writings. It's one of the 5 Megillot, the 5 scrolls. The most famous, of course, is Megillat Esther, but you also have Shir HaShirim, Song of Songs, Kohelet, Ecclesiastes, Eicha, what am I forgetting? Ruth, Ruth.
Tehillim, you said Tehillim? Ruth.
It's not a Megillah.
Esther.
I said Esther. Ruth. Oh, am I missing one? What are they saying in the chat? Why am I drawing a blank?
So again, Eicha.
Tisha BeAv is Eicha, Ruth, Esther, Kohelet, Shir Shirim. I got them all.
Yeah. Good.
Each one is associated with a different holiday. Purim for Megillat Esther, and there are other ones. Not that this is a holiday, but it is a special day on the calendar, and Megillat Eicha is one of the things that we read to mark it. Traditionally, they say that Jeremiah, the prophet who lived through the destruction of the first temple in 586 BCE, wrote Megillat Eicha. It's poetry. It's a lament. It's a collection of 5 poems. Each chapter is a new poem. Most of them, if not all of them, in the form of an acrostic poem, using every letter of the Hebrew alphabet, as if to suggest that from Aleph to Taf, from A to Z, it's a complete and full expression of how sad and how much pain we feel.
Wow, that is interesting. What I read is because they violated every single mitzvah of the Torah, from Aleph to Tav.
That's another interesting interpretation, of course.
Yeah, and they are all alphabetical except for chapter 5,
where it switches.
It doesn't follow any order. Chapter 5.
No, there are some places too. I think we'll have to watch for where I remember reading that Ayin and Pei are actually flipped.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, let's see if that happens.
But also, according to Rashi, it said that Jeremiah wrote chapters 1, 2, and 4, and that was
okay.
And that was burned by King Yehoiakim. And then after the destruction, he rewrote them and added chapter 3 and 5. That's Rashi's explanation.
Interesting. I've not heard that one. That's new.
I guess they had to kind of explain why chapter 3 and 5 look different. So they were written after the fact. And it was kind of interesting, the explanation.
When Rabbi Mas and I talked, as I alluded to a few moments ago, and figured out what to do for Tisha BeAv, for Megillat Eicha, we came up with this idea to have an interactive reading of Eicha. We've done different programs at Shared Zedek before. I've read it, Rabbi Mas has read it. We've done different things to try and bring attention to it. But with this new format we've put together, it's almost like a fake concert. We reached out to over a dozen different readers from all over the world. Some former colleagues of ours from the JSLI program from our year or other years, other people with Winnipeg connections, other people with connections to Rabbi Mas, either right now or from his past in Chile and in Argentina. And we've got men and women, some people reading Eicha who learned it specifically this for the first time, some people from Winnipeg, some people from all over the world again. And we divided up the already divided book into smaller sections, and you'll be able to hear each person and see each person chant his or her selection. We also reached out for some commentary to a number of rabbis. Some of them you will recognize. So there are some special treats along the way, and we look forward to seeing all of these people and their contributions. The gist, to set it up, of Megillat Eicha is the first temple destroyed by the Babylonians. Many of the people exiled to Babylonia, some left back in Judah under Babylonian captivity, really. And these poems that have been compiled, interesting, they never mention the Babylonians. They're describing Jerusalem in ruins, the temple gone, what has happened to the city, to the capital. to the homeland of the Jewish people. And the positioning, I suppose you could say, of Megillat Eicha, because the Babylonians are not mentioned, is this idea that almost that God is punishing Bnei Israel, one interpretation. Like Rabbi Mas mentioned, maybe for breaking all of the mitzvot in the Torah. But it's a lament, it's a cry. Eicha, alas, how has this happened to us? Why has this happened to us? Our city is lonely in ruins. Anything you want to add, Rabbi, before we start from our first? I think we got our first Rabbi comment, don't we?
Well, it's interesting because I read an explanation that Jerusalem is described as a widow. But the fact that it says it's like a widow, but it doesn't say that it's a widow. It's a hint of the rebuild of the temple. That this is going to be temporary. It's like something, but not the real thing.
Oh.
So there is hope encapsulated, like in between the lines of Eicha.
That's an important point, because if you look on the surface level, as many people have and will comment, there really isn't a lot of hope in Megillat Eicha. It's very much a spiritual downturn, and it's very, very low. So you have to find little moments in between the lines like that.
Okay, so let's begin. First, we have an introduction to chapter 1 by a familiar face, our beloved emeritus, Rabbi Alan Green. And immediately after, you're going to hear the chapter 1. Are we ready? So if
I was going to mention one other thing, that you captioned it so that people will be able to see the English translation scrolling along the bottom.
Very important. Yeah.
If you don't have a way of following the text, if you do, and you have a full Tanakh, it's Eicha, it's Lamentations in the English, it's in the Ketuvim section, the writing section. I think it comes right after Megillat Rut, if you're looking for an order. But if you don't have a way of following along, we don't have the Hebrew, but we do have the English, and it'll scroll through.
Yeah. If there is any problem with the audio, please let me know in the chat. We'll correct it. Start it again. Here we go with Rabbi Alan Green, all the way from Fairfield, Iowa.
Tisha BeAv is the darkest day in the Jewish calendar, a day of multiple disasters, including the destruction of both first and second temples. But the rabbis of old offer an astounding teaching about Tisha BeAv. They say that the Messiah is born on Tisha BeAv. Let's take a moment to think about that. The Messiah, the messianic era of peace on earth and goodwill among humanity, is born on Tisha BeAv. But how can this be? What possible connection can there be between a time of peace on earth and a day on which we mourn war and death and destruction? The answer is to think about a seed. In order to grow, a seed must be planted in the earth. In that deeply secret place, the seed undergoes a vast transformation in which it actually disintegrates in order to sprout. In other words, the seed must pass through a process of complete destruction to become something utterly new, bursting with energy and vitality. This is the deep principle behind human growth and development. Like the seed in the ground, we can't become who we're really supposed to be without ceasing to be who we've already been. This is what makes change so challenging and difficult. Because in all growth processes, there must inevitably be a critical moment of pure nothingness in which one ceases to be who they've been without yet becoming who they're destined to be. This is the power of Tisha BeAv. Tisha BeAv is that moment of pure nothingness, when all that has been carefully nurtured and built over the years is suddenly raised to the ground. Like the seed sprouting in the ground, that critical moment contains the maximum potential for our growth and transformation. Remembering that seed is the real reason why on Tisha BeAv we customarily sit on the ground. This is the real reason why on Tisha BeAv we visit the grave sites of loved ones. And this is why on Tisha BeAv the Messiah is born, and the seed of peace on earth is sown for the redemption of all humanity everywhere.
Eicha, ישבה ודד, העיר רבתי עם, הייתה כאלמנה, רבתי וגויים, שרתי במדינות, הייתה למס, פחות תבכה בלילה, ודמעתה על לחיה, אין לה מנחם מכל אוהביה, כל רעה בגדובה היו לה לאויבים, גלתה יהודה מעוני ומרוב עבודה, היא ישבה בגויים, לא מצאה מנוח, כל רודפיה השיגוה בין המצרים, דרכי ציון אבלות, מבלי באי מועד, כל שעריה שוממים, כהניה ננחים, בתולותיה נוגות, והיא מרלה. היו צריה לראש, אויביה שלו, כי אדוני הוגה על רוב פשעיה, עולליה הלכו שבי לפני צר, ויצא מבת ציון כל הדרה, היו שריה, כאיילים לא מצאו מרעה, וילכו ולא כוח לפני רודף, זכרה ירושלים ימי עוניה ומרודיה, כל מחמודיה אשר היו מימי קדם, בנפול עמה ביד צר, ואין עוזר לה. ראו הצרים, שחקו על משבטיה, חטא חטאה ירושלים, על כן לנידה הייתה, כל מכבדיה הזילוה, כי ראו ערוותה, גם היא ננחה ותשוב אחור, טומאתה בשוליה, לא זכרה אחירתה, ותרד פלאים, אין מנחם לה. ראה אדוני את עוני, כי גדיל אויב, ידו פרס בשר על כל מחמדיה, כי ראתה גויים באו מקדשה, אשר ציווית לא יבואו בקהל לך.
כל אמן אנכים מבקשים לחם, נתנו מחמדיהם, באוכל השיב נפש. ראה אדוני והביטה, כי הייתי זוללה. לא עליכם כל עוברי דרך, הביטו וראו. אם יש מחוב כמחובי, אשר עולה לי, אשר הוגה אדוני ביום אחרון אפו, ממרום שלח אש בעצמותי וירדנה. פרס רשת לרגלי, השיבני אחור, נתנני שוממה כל היום תאווה. נזכד עול פשעי בידו, יסתרגו. עלו על צווארי, הכשיל כוחי. נתנני אדוני בידי לא אוכל כלום. סלה כל אבירי אדוני בקרבי, קרא עלי מועד לשבור בחורי. גת טרח אדוני לי בתולת בת יהודה. על אלה אני בוכייה, איני יורד המים, כי רחק ממני, מנחם משיב נפשי. היו בני שוממים, כי גבר אויב. פרסת ציון בידיה, אין מנחם לה, ציווה אדוני ליעקב סביביו צריו. הייתה ירושלים לנידה ביניהם. צדיק הוא אדוני כי פיהו מריתי. שמעונה כל העמים, וראו מה חובי, בתולותי ובחורי הלכו ושבי. קראתי למאהבי, הם הרימוני, Kohanai Uzkenai Ba'ir Gava'u Ki Bikshu Ochel Lamho Yashivu Et Nafsham Re'eh Adonai Kitzar Li Me'ai Chamar Maru Nepach Libi B'kirbi Kimaro Mahariti Michutz Shikla Cherev B'bayit Kamavet Sham'u Ki Ne'enachani Ein Menachem Li Kol Oivai Shamurati Sasu Ki Ata Asita Heveta Yom Karata Biuchamoni Tavo Choratam Lefanecha Be'oleh Lamo Ka'asher Olalta Li Al Kol Pesha'ai Girabod Anchotai Belibi Davai.
Chapter 1. So nice to see Rabbi Ricky Lobo.
Yeah, absolutely.
The second reader there. She is, if you noticed the great captioning done by Rabbi Mas, she's from Sacramento, California. She was one of the other candidates who received smicha along with Rabbi Mas and myself. She was in our group. And I can tell you that she is a tremendous scholar and has all of the skills. I remember she's in her community, she's a Torah reader, and I think she's a Mafter teacher as well. And I remember her saying that every year on Tisha BeAv, she ends up doing Eicha because no one else in her community can. So when we were talking about this, I said to Anibal, reach out to her. It would be great to get her on the screen and be able to talk a little bit about her, because she was part of our group. So that was great. And before her, Becky Barlev-Henning. She is, if I'm not mistaken, she's also in JSLI, is she not? Was she
She's
a cantorial candidate?
Yeah, she's a cantor from JSLI. And by the way, talking about our group, I can see here a message from Dan Betzel.
Oh, Dan Betzel is another one of
Yeah.
the 6 of us who graduated together from Columbus, Ohio, a former tax attorney turned rabbi.
And Ricky is watching, and she just typed, "Good to be back with you."
Oh,
Yeah,
amazing.
So nice.
It's like we haven't missed a beat doing things online again, like when we davened and learned together, but amazing. I think if you were following along and you were watching the translation, one of the things that occurs to me, Rabbi, is just because the temple and the Babylonians aren't specifically mentioned, it adds for me, there's a universal nature to Eicha that makes it also very timeless. You know, it applies to what Jeremiah and our ancient ancestors lived through, but it could also really be applied to so many of the tragedies throughout Jewish history and the ones that we're commemorating on Tisha B'Av. I wanted to share this quote with you about that idea.
But absolutely,
it's from,
because I don't know if you noticed, Jeremiah is not quoted. So basically, this could be any witness.
The quote is, Eicha is the eternal lament for all Jewish catastrophes, past, present, and future. Very powerful stuff.
We're going to have some of the rabbis coming up talking about the word Eicha.
We should mention, though, before we go to chapter 2, that the introduction there from our Rabbi Emeritus, Rabbi Green, first of all, he looks incredible at his home there in Fairfield, Iowa.
So relaxed,
hearing him, so relaxed. But hearing it was such a perfect Rabbi Green teaching, you know, talking about how the Mashiach is born on Tisha B'Av and trying to talk about hope and trying to talk about seeds and how you have to kind of burn the forest down before you can replant it and grow it back better than ever. Hearing him, though, with that familiar cadence, that familiar delivery, it just wouldn't be a Sherrod Zedek event, sometimes without that voice. He's amazing. It's so great that you got him.
But now for chapter 2, we have my former rabbi from Chile giving the introduction, Rabbi Eduardo Weingarten. He's a celebrity in Chile. He's the chaplain of the government. So whenever the government needs a rabbi, they call him. Yeah.
He's also the guy who taught you everything you know, right?
Yeah.
Isn't he that guy? He's that guy.
Yeah.
So this is really special because hearing him, this was my first introduction to Rabbi Weingarten. I've heard Anibal talk about this guy for, over 18 years, basically from the minute you arrived in Winnipeg, because he is that guy who taught you everything you know. And so for him to participate in this is yet another really, truly special part. So let's hear from him. Are you ready, Rabbi? Chapter 2?
But basically, he doesn't speak English. So he did it in Spanish. And I added the subtitles. I hope I did a good job trying to because you know what happened with idioms and expressions, right? Sometimes it's very difficult to capture the sentiment of what a person tried to say. So, but without further ado, Rabbi Eduardo Weingarten from Chile, and then chapter 2.
Tisha BeAv es un momento de reflexión y también un momento para tener muy presente el privilegio de vivir en una generación que tiene nada menos que Medinat Israel. Tisha BeAv es un recuerdo de lo duro y difícil que fue la vida del pueblo de Israel y de cómo, si no estamos juntos y si no estamos cerca del Kadosh Baruj Hu, estas cosas pueden volver a repetirse. Por lo tanto, en Winnipeg, en Jerusalén o en Chile, lo importante es que cada vez seamos mejores judíos, y esa es nuestra fórmula para lograr que el Tikkun Olam se logre a través de sembrar amor y no odio. Si el templo se destruyó por Sinat Hinam, debe reconstruirse por Ahavat Hinam. Si fue por odio gratuito, tiene que reconstruirse por amor gratuito. Es un orgullo poder hablar con la comunidad del rabino Aníbal y decirles que tienen una persona maravillosa. Y entonces, que Tisha BeAv nos una a los judíos de Chile con los judíos de Winnipeg es una forma de tikkun, una pequeña fórmula para decir que Am Israel Jai. Que no haya más motivos de dolor y que solo sean motivos de alegría.
Eicha yahiv be'apo Adonai et bat Zion ishlich mishamayim eretz tiferet Israel velo zachar hadom raglav beyom apo milad Adonai velo chamal את כל נאות יעקב הרס בברתו מבצרי בת יהודה הגיע לארץ הילל ממלכה ושריה גדה בחורייו כל קרן ישראל השיף אחור ימינו מפני אויב ויבער ויעקב כאש להבה אכלה סביב דרך קשתו כאויב ניצב ימינו כצר ויהרוג כל מחמדי עין באוהל בת ציון שפך כאש חמתו היה אדוני כאויב בילה ישראל, בילה כל ארמנותיה שיחת מבצריו. וירב בבת יהודה תעניה בניה, ויחמוס כגן סוכו שיחת מועדו. שיקח אדוני בציון מועד בשבת, וינץ בזעם אפו מלך וכהן. זנח אדוני מזבחו ניער מקדשו, הזכיר ביד אויב חומות ארמנותיה כל. נתנה בבית אדוני כיום מועד. חשב אדוני להשחית חומת בת ציון, נטע כף לא השיב ידו מבלעה, ויבל חיל בחומה יחדיו ומללו. טבעו בארץ שעריה, איבד ושיבר וריחיה, מלכה וצריה, בגויים אין תורה, גם נביאיה לא מצאו חזון מאדוני. ישבו לארץ ידמו זקני בת ציון, העלו עפר על ראשם, חגרו שקים, הורידו לארץ ראשן בתולות ירושלים. כלו בדמעות עיניי, חומר מרומי, נשפך לארץ כבדי על שבר בדמי. בעטף עולה ויונק ברחובות קריה.
לאמותם יאמרו היד הגן ויין, ויתעטפם כחלל ברחובות עיר, וישתפק נפשם אל חיק אמותם. מעידך מעד המלך, הבת ירושלים, מה אשווה לך ונחמך, ותולד בציון, כי גדול קיים שברך מירפלך. נביאייך חזו לך שב ותפל, ולא גילו על עוונך להשיב שביותך. ויחזו לך מסת שווא ומדוכים. סבכו עלייך כפגים כל עוברי דרך, שרקו ויניעו ראשם על בת ירושלים. הזאת העיר שיאמרו כלילת יופי, משוש לכל הארץ. פצו עלייך פיהם כל אויבייך, שרקו ויחרקו שן, אמרו בילנו אך זה היום שקיווינו, מצאנו רגינו. עשה אדוני אשר זמם, ביצע אמרתו אשר ציווה מימי קדם, ארס ולא חמל, וישמח עלייך אויב, הרים קרן שרי. צעק ליבם אל אדוני, חומה בציון. הורידו כנחל דמעה יומם ולילה, אל תיתנו פוגעת לך, אל תדום בתינך. מי רוני בלילה, לראש השמורות, שפכי חמים ליבך, נוכח פני אדוני, שאי אליו כפך, על נפש עולולייך, עטופים ברע, בראש כל חוצות. ראה אדוני בהביטה, למי עוללת כה? אם תאכלנה נשים פריים, עוללי טיפוחים. אם ירא במקדש אדוני, כהן ונביא. שכבו לארץ חוצות, נער וזקן, בתולותיי ובחוריי נפלו בחרב. הרגת ביום אפיך, טבחת, לא חמלת. יקרא יום מועד מגוריי מסביב, ולא היה ביום אף אדוני פליד ושריד, אשר טיפחתי וריביתי, אויבי אילם.
The end of chapter 2.
Yeah, so good.
So,
You know that Elias Rosenberg and myself, we studied together the cantorial school in Argentina.
so that was a former classmate of yours.
Yeah.
From cantorial school, and he works in the Boston area, the
Yes,
New Massachusetts. Tell us about the first cantor with Gaston.
Yeah, well, I met him actually at a cantor's convention. I didn't know him in Argentina. He's from Argentina, but I met him in one of the conventions.
Where is he? I'm drawing a blank. Where is he coming
He's
from?
in Florida now.
He's in Florida.
There are lots of Florida cantors that is going to participate here.
Both of them with just tremendous voices. You really, with the voices we've heard so far, you really get a sense. I don't know if you agree with me, Anibal, but what's really interesting about the Eicha for me musically is it really, really gets into a rhythm. Yeah. There's not a lot of. It's not like Torah or even Haftarah where there's a lot of musical variation and different monotone. Readings can really say it's almost monotone, right? Like it's almost very.
It's almost like trying to make the listener enter into a trance.
Well said. I think that's exactly what Eicha should be. That's exactly how I think the music. It shouldn't be fancy and flowery. Even with these fantastic voices you hear, it really has a na 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 na. It's very repetitive, and it really adds to, I think, that lament feel. In that chapter there, in chapter 2, if you were following, the tone really changes, right? And I like this. I find this interesting for me. The first chapter is despair. it's so much sadness, right? But that chapter, and especially at the end, where the speaker directly talks to God, that chapter is angry.
Yeah.
Right. And they talk about that, right? When you go through stages of grieving or stages of dealing with terrible news or something like this, that often denial is first and then it gives way to anger. So I think the fact that the second chapter has anger, that really works for me. I think it fits very well with the way they put it together.
Yeah.
The other thing that we should mention, of course, is that the opening remarks from your teacher, Rabbi Weingorten, talking about something that came up a lot this afternoon in our rabbis panel with the other three rabbis from Winnipeg, this idea of sinat chinam and ahavat chinam. That the temple was destroyed because of the way we were treating each other, and that if we ever hope one day to rebuild the temple or just to improve, to learn from it. I think you mentioned that too, learning from it and turning sinat chinam into ahavat chinam. So what a great message from him to start chapter 2.
In other words, the idea what the rabbis are trying to emphasize here is if the temple is not rebuilt, it means that we haven't changed. In other words, we are destroying the temple every day again and again and again. Because it's a fact. Even if I remember, Matthew, what you were saying before during the panel, that sometimes things just happen, right? But regardless of that, it's a fact that we are not united.
Mm-hmm.
We cannot deny that.
Nope, you're right.
So,
absolutely.
There is a great need of Ahavat Hinam to give love, basis love. That I think that's how it's called. And I believe that this idea of connecting people from all over the world is a great way of doing it. So you see, we are all complaining about the pandemic that we are going through. But sometimes what we have to do is to find the positive. And this is something very positive. This kind of things, this kind of connections between different synagogues will have never happened without a pandemic. I know it's crazy to say that, but it's also a fact. It will never happen. This kind of collaborations are amazing, and it's all a result of the times that we are going through.
Even something like this, even being able to have all of these voices from all over the world come together through this format to bring new life into something like Megillat Eicha. Wouldn't have been able to do this probably without the pandemic, or we wouldn't have even really thought of the idea. But there's an expression, you talked about expressions before and having trouble translating. I don't know what the Spanish equivalent is, but in English we have this expression, necessity is the mother of invention, right? That all the great ideas in the world have come out of the fact that we needed something, right? You don't just sit around and think, oh, there's a great idea. When you need something, it forces you. It's like having that deadline almost that gets deals done. Are you ready for chapter 3? This one, I've been looking forward to this. I've thought a little bit in between since we started about what you said about how Rashi says that Jeremiah didn't write chapter 3. He wrote chapters 1, 2, and 4. And right off, the very first word of chapter 3 should give people a clue as to why this one, it's different from the first 2 long poems that make up chapters 1 and 2. Despair in chapter 1, anger in chapter 2. And right off the bat, chapter 3, it's a little bit strange. Plus, it's longer. It's a triple acrostic. 3 sentences, 3 lines for every letter of the alphabet.
Yeah, actually, no, Rashi says that Jeremiah did write it, but later.
Later. I misunderstood.
Later.
Okay.
But also,
I get it.
The rabbis say that the way it started says, Ani Agever. Right?
Ani. That's
Agever.
the key.
I'm the man. I'm the man. That whoever is writing this, right? They said, I'm the man. But the rabbis noticed that the gematria, the numerology of Ani Agever, is the same of Irmiyahu. I am the man, it has the same numerical value of Jeremiah. So that's interesting too.
It's weird. In the prophetic books, though, they get to name themselves. Their names are right in there. Why remove himself? Maybe it has to tie in with that other idea of it being, universal. I think some people would argue that Jeremiah maybe didn't actually write it.
Yeah.
But what I was thinking about, Ani, was the idea that right off, Ani, I, all of a sudden we have a first person. We have a single person, right? And the imagery up to this point has been very female. Jerusalem is a she. You talked about the widow. There's lots of female imagery in the first 2 chapters. And now you say, I am the man. Is this guy one of the people who was kicked out? Is he maybe the male counterpart of the female imagery of the city? Who knows? But the fact that there is an eye, chapter 3 is going to be very different from what we've seen so far.
And Rabbi Michael Even David, who is the one who's going to get the introduction, I met him in Chile. When I moved to Chile, he was this little boy who would come to synagogue every day. You know that we talk about this many times, how it's not common to see like a post-bar mitzvah kid to keep coming, and he wanted to learn more and more and more, and he ended up being a rabbi, and he lives in Israel.
Very cool. I think he lives in Beersheba.
Beersheba, yeah. He was one of these people that Rabbi Weingarten actually mentored him. Before chapter 4, we are going to have another one that was mentored by Weingarten. But
don't rush us ahead.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later.
We'll get there.
So let's start with Rabbi Michael Even David from Beersheba, and then chapter 3.
Shalom, my friends. This is Rabbi Michael Even David from the community Eshel Avraham here in the city of Beersheba, the city of the patriarchs. And I wanted to share with you on this week of Tisha BeAv a midrash that I like very much. We read in one of the Haftorot that we read in this time of the year, the words of the prophet Jeremiah. Listen to the word of God, house of Jacob, all the family of the house of Israel. So says the Lord, what did your ancestors find wrong with me to make them go so far away from me, to make them go after vanities and become themselves a vanity? And there's a midrash in Eicha, one of the medieval books of midrashim, that opens the door to understand this drama between God and Israel. When God sees the temple destroyed, he cries and says to Yirmiyahu, to the prophet Jeremiah, and the angels, Oi, of course, very Jewish, Oi, my house is destroyed. My sons, where are you? My Kohanim, my priests, where are you? My beloved, where are you? What can I do about you? I did warn you, and you did not repent. And then he says to Yirmiyahu, to Jeremiah the prophet, don't you feel pain for me? Go and bring Abraham, Isaac, and Yaakov, and Moshe from their tombs, because they know how to cry. You, Jeremiah, you don't know how to cry. You don't feel enough. So bring the patriarchs, bring Moshe, and maybe they will. Even if there isn't a theology of sin and punishment present in the Midrash, it shows that God suffers as well. He's angry with the prophet Yirmiyahu because the prophet doesn't cry, because he doesn't completely understand the despair of God in front of destruction and tragedy. So Yirmiyahu brings the fathers of the nation, and each one of them explains to God why Israel deserves God's mercy. No one of them is convincing enough. Until Rachel, our mother, Rachel Imeinu, she jumps in front of God and reminds God how in her nuptial night, when she was supposed to be married, she and Jacob agreed on secret signs in order to be sure that Lavan, her father, that we know he was a cheater, that he wouldn't cheat Jacob. Rachel, however, she felt pity on Leah, her sister, and taught her the signs, even laying under the bed to speak with Jacob in her own voice and not Leah's. Rachel says to God, if I, a woman of flesh and bones, made of dust and ashes, I was not jealous of my competition, of my sister Leah, and I didn't want to expose her to embarrassment, then how can it be that you, King of the world, merciful and good, why are you jealous of idolatry? Why are you jealous of idols and statues? That there is nothing real about it. The sand, the pieces of wood, pieces of stone. Why do you send my children to exile and give them to be killed by swords and their enemies to do with them as they please? And God hears Rachel's words, and he has mercy on Israel. And he promises that they will go back to the land of Israel and to Jerusalem. Rachel is very daring on her words and says that the sin of Israel is not real because there is no other gods to be unfaithful with. And that God shouldn't be so angry. There's a connection with vanity. Rachel said that the people became despair of the world, that they didn't have strength to keep their hope and faith. So they turned to idolatry and vanity that is not real, and that God, instead of punishing them, he should have pitied them. Not to punish them anymore, actually to take them close to him, to the source of hope, to the source of living waters. And I wish that we all find consolation in this idea. And we pray that we're going to live to see a day when fast days and avelut and mourning periods won't be necessary anymore.
אני הגבר רעוני בשבט עברתו אותי נהג ויולך חושך ולא אור אך בי ישוב יהפוך ידו כל היום בילה בשרי ועורי שיבר עצמותיי בנה עליי ויקף ראש ותעלה במחשכים הושיבני כמת העולם גדר בעלי ולא אצא הכביד נחושתי גם כי אזעק ואשבע סתם תפילתי גדר דרכי בגזית נתיבותי איבה טוב עורבו לי ארי במסתרים דרכי סורר ויפשחני סמיני שומר
דרך קשתו ויציבני כמטרה לחץ הביא בהיליותיי פני השפטו הייתי שחוק לכל עמי נגינתם כל היום השביעני במרורים הרבני לענן ויגרס בחצץ שיני הכפישני באפר ותזנח משלום נפשי נשיתי טובה ואומר עבד נצחי ותאכלתי מאדוני זכור עוני ומרותי לנברוש זכור תזכור ותשוח עלי נפשי זאת השיב אל ליבי על כן אוכיל חסדי אדוני כי לא תאמנו כי לא חלו רחמיו חדשים לבקרים רבה אמונתך
חלקי אדוני אמרה נפשי על כן אוכילו טוב אדוני lekovav, lenefesh, tidrashenu. Tov veyachil vedumam lichuat Adonai. Tov lagever kisao bin urav. Yeshev badad ve'idom ki natal alav. Iten be'afar pihu ulai yesh tikva. Iten lemakehu lechi ispa becherpa. Ki lo iznach leolam Adonai. Ki imhoga vericham kerov chasadav. Ki lo ina milibo vayage bnei ish. Ledake tachat raglav kol asirei aretz. Lehatot mishpat gaver neged pnei elyon.
Le'aveit Adam berivo Adonai lo ra. Mi ze amar vatehi Adonai lo tziva. Mi pi elyon lo tetzei haraot vehatov. Ma'itonein adam chai gever al chatav. Nach pesad derachenu venach kora venashuva ad Adonai. Nisa levavenu el kapayim el bashamayim. Nachnu pashanu umarinu ata lo salachta. Sakota va'av vatirdefenu haragta lo chamalta. Sakota ve'anan lach me'avor tefila. Sechi u'ma'os tesimeinu bekerev ha'amim. Patsu aleinu pihem kol oiveinu. Pachad v'fachad hayalanu haset v'chashaver. Pagei mayim terad eni al shever batami. Eni nigra velo tidme mein afugot ad yashkif v'yere Adonai mishamayim. Eni olela lenafshi mikol benotiri. Tzaduni katzipor oivai chinam. Tzamtu vapor chayai vayadu even bi. Tzafu mayim al roshi amarti nigzarti. Karati shimcha Adonai mibor tachtiot. Koli shamata al talem oznecha lera רווחתי לשבתי, קרבת ביום אקראך, אמרת אל תירא. רבת אדוני, ריבי נפשי גאלת חיי. ראית אדוני, אהבתי, שופטה משפטי.
ראית כל נקמתם, כל מחשבותם לי. שמעת חרפתם, אדוני, כל מחשבותם עלי. שפתי קמי והגיונם עלי כל היום. שבטם וקימתם הביטה אני מנגינתם. תשיב להם גמול. אדוני כמעשה ידיהם, תיתן להם מגינת לב, תלתך להם. תרדוף באף ותשמידם מתחת שמי אדוני. I was able to run from my office upstairs down very, very quickly
Yeah.
after finishing off that chapter. At least I did your advice and kept the same shirt that I did the recording in when I sent that to you earlier. What an honor for me to be included with, a strong Winnipeg contingent there.
Yeah.
We have Leslie Emery, who's just come back after a year off for maternity leave, member of our ritual team, lay clergy, amazing, great to have her back. Bonnie Cham, past president. I can't remember if she ever did anything for Eicha before, but I remember she learned the Eicha trope for our Yom HaShoah commemorations.
Yes, that's correct.
Because Megillat HaShoah, which is very, very new in the scope of Judaism, they decided to use, and it makes sense, the trope of Eicha. So Bonnie knew that. That was a great thing. And Barb Neiman, what a kol hakavod to Barb Neiman, who just a few years ago had never read Torah before. And now, after spending a little time learning together, she has become an ace Torah reader. And I said, would you be interested maybe in, trying during these pandemic times? I don't know. She was maybe looking for something to keep her mind sharp. I said, why not the Eicha trope? And it was a little rough at the beginning, but as you could hear there, she did a fantastic job. First time ever doing Eicha for this project.
Wow, that was amazing. And she has such a strong connection with the synagogue. I think she's brilliantly continuing the legacy of her father.
And he, of course, was continuing the legacy of his father. Yeah. She really is a legacy. Maybe we need to make Barbara president of the synagogue in order, but wait, that's up to her. For me, though, Rabbi Mas, the coolest part of that one was it started with Cantor Sandy Cohen, who was my teacher and is pretty much, if I had to come up with the one person who's responsible for me ending up working with you as a rabbi chair tzedek, he got it all started. And to see him there, first of all, his hair is amazing. It wasn't like white when I knew him like that. His hair is absolutely incredible. His voice is the same, though. He's got that amazing, that voice is just absolutely the same. I know he was Leslie's teacher too. So it was really, really cool that you were able to connect with him out in Connecticut, which is where he has been ever since he left Winnipeg. And as much as I love Cantor Cohen, and it would have been cool to work with him, if he hadn't left, I would have never met you, Rabbi, former Cantor Mas. So I got room for both of you guys in my heart, but really, really cool to see him there.
Very
that was a really special chapter for me.
And the other Cantor was Norman Cohen.
So where was he from? He's from Florida, but what's his story?
He's from Argentina. But it was interesting because for a while he was a cantor in England. I can't remember which city. In a synagogue that they used only Lewandowski music. So he.
Well, I like that. I love Lewandowski.
But the whole service, Lewandowski with an organ and the big choir, every single prayer. In fact, the thing that we do sometimes with the Sherizede choir, מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות. He gave me the scores because he's an expert. Cantor Norman is an expert on Lewandowski.
Really?
Yeah, he sang pretty much every single piece composed by Lewandowski.
Amazing.
He has a CD that he
Lewandowski
recorded.
did the Tzadika Tamar that I love from Friday night. That's my favorite. Tzadika Tamar Ifra. That one. That's Lewandowski.
Under his tenure at the synagogue, they actually took all the old Lewandowski scores that were written with this kind of... It was not nice to read, and they rewrote everything with modern software. So
very cool.
To get other choirs to perform Lewandowski as well. Very interesting.
Very cool. I don't know if you've been paying super close attention, if you noticed that in this chapter and the last chapter, as I was right, the ayin and the pei are switched.
Huh.
I don't know if this was an old way, maybe once upon a time that the Hebrew alphabet was put together, but samech, pei, ayin. Weird for both this chapter 3 and chapter 2. We'll see what happens in chapter 4, which is what we should get to next. How are you going to set this up? Who are we going to hear from? Oh, wait. We should react to that incredible midrash.
Oh yeah,
there's so much going on there. That introduction. I told you, I had heard that midrash before.
And by the way,
and I loved it.
Rocky Pollack says that Beersheba is Winnipeg's sister city. I didn't know that.
I don't know if I knew that.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Makes a lot of sense, actually. It's very flat.
I don't know. Anyway.
It's on the what's the desert? It's on the plains.
But beautiful
that midrash is really about the power of Rachel. You and I, we were talking about this. We once did as one of our Shabbat morning services this song. Is it Yonatan Razel, Mama Rachel, that taps into this idea of Rachel's power in crying for the people?
Itzi Waldner.
Itzi Waldner. Well, that's a great one. If anyone wants to check that out, Mama Rachel is what that one is called, talking about Rachel. But that idea tied into the midrash there about her ability to weep, and to weep the right way, to lament the right way.
To weep the right way is when you can emphasize? No, emphasize. What is the word?
Empathize.
Empathize.
I got you. Don't worry.
Thank you. Yeah, when empathize with the other person.
Yep.
It's not. You don't cry for you. You have the ability to cry for the other. That's the beauty of the midrash, and sometimes we fail with that.
For chapter 4, is this the one where our friend Rabbi Jeremy is going to introduce things?
This is Rabbi Claudio Khodorkovsky, also very near. He's in Saskatoon, but he was born in Chile, and he actually is the son of my former executive director for the synagogue in Chile. And he was also mentored by Rabbi Eduardo Weingarten. He went to study rabbinic studies in Argentina, and now he's in Canada.
And he's been in Saskatoon for a few years now, hasn't he?
Yeah, and he loves it there. And he collaborates with Jeremy Parnes, the rabbi from Regina. They pinch hit for each other when they take holidays.
Rabbi Jeremy is going to do the introduction to chapter 5, but let's go to chapter 4 first.
Okay.
Eicha yashba avadav. How the city stands alone. This is the cry, the lamentation of Prophet Jeremiah for the destruction of the city of Jerusalem and its holy temple. Eicha is the lament that we sing each year on Tisha BeAv, with a melody that conveys despair and desolation. It represents the cry of our heart when we are confronted with devastation, death, and uncertainty for the future. Without any doubt, this has been a year of Eicha for the entire world. How humanity has been afflicted by a deadly virus with so much suffering, death, financial instability, and devastating consequences for everyone. But our Jewish tradition always invites us to confront destruction with responsibility. It is very interesting that the word Eicha is written with the same letters as the word Ayeka. where are you? This is a question that God asked Adam when he was hiding from him in the Garden of Eden after eating from the forbidden fruit. Judaism invites us to move from Eicha, the lament, to Eicha, where are you? God is asking us about our responsibility. What can we do to mitigate the pain and suffering? What are we doing to help our neighbor, to protect the elderly, to support those who put their lives in risk for the vulnerable? Today we mourn for Jerusalem and for all those who lost their lives in the last year. Let's ask God for His blessing on this Tisha BeAv so we can respond to Eicha with Eicha, with our deeds, to bring some consolation and light in a time of darkness, to transform mourning and suffering into hope for the future.
Eicha yuam zahav yishne haketem hatov tishtapech navne kodesh birosh kol chutzot b'nei Tzion haikarim hamsulaim ba'paz Eicha nechshevu lenivlei cheres Maseh yedei yotzer Gam tanin chaltzu shad Heiniku gurehen Batami liachzar Kainim bamidbar Davak lishon yonek El chiko batzama Olalim sha'alu lechem Pores ein lahem Ha'ochlim lema'adanim Nashamu bachutzot Ha'emunim alei tolah Chilku ashpatot Vayigdal avon batamihi Mechatat Sidom Hafuchach moraga V'lo haluva yadayim Zaku nizireha misheleg Tzahu mechalav Adamu etzem mipninihim Sapir gizratam Chashach mishachor taraham Lo nikru bachutzot Tzafar oraham al atzmaham Yavesh hayacha etz Tovim hayu chalalei cherev Mechalalei ra'av Shehem yazovu medukarim Mitnuvot sadai Yedei Nashim rachamaniot Bishlu yaldehen Hayu levarot lamo Bishever batami Ki la Adonai et chamato shafach charon apo Vayatzet eish b'tzion vatochal yesodoteha
לא האמינו מלכי ארץ, כל יושבי תבל, כי יבוא צר ואויב בשערי ירושלים. מחטאות נביאיה, עוונות כהניה, השופכים בקרבם צדיקים, נהו הברים בחוצות, נגואלו באדם, ולא יאכלו יגעו בלבושיהם, סורו טמא, קראו למו, סורו אל תיגעו, כי נצו גם נהו, אמרו בגויים לא יוסיפו לגור, פני אדוני חלקם לא יוסיף להביטם, פני כהנים לא נשאו וזקנים לא חננו, הודיענו תכלנה עינינו אל עזרתנו אבל, בציפייתנו ציפינו אל גוי לא יושיע, צעדו צעדינו מלכת ברחובותינו, קרב קצינו מלאו ימינו כי בא קיצנו, קלים יהיו רודפינו מנשרי שמיים, על הערים דלקנו במדבר ארבו לנו, רוח אפינו משיח אדוני נלכד בשחיתותם, אשר אמרנו בצילו נחיה בגויים, סיסי ושמחי בת אדום יושבת בארץ עוץ, גם עלייך דבר כוס תשכרי ותתארי, גם עוונך בציון לא יוסיף להגלותך, פקד עוונך ותדום גילה על חטאותייך.
And that concludes chapter 4. You know, Rabbi Mas, I really like that cantor who was at the end there. Isn't he the guy who replaced you at your synagogue in Santiago?
Ariel Feuchel. Yeah. But it's
I was just kidding around. I really do like his voice, but I was teasing you a little bit with that one because I already knew that from your Shavuot concert.
They decided to go from a tenor to a baritone.
Even though I told you gave it up though. When you showed me, when I first met you and you showed me tapes from the beginning of your career, you were a baritone.
No, I wasn't. Never. Never.
I'm telling you, I don't know if I could still play them because who has a cassette these days? But if I ever found those cassettes you gave me of you doing early days for Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, sounded lower to me. But anyway, yes, they went from you from a tenor to definitely a rich baritone there, Cantor Feuchel. And then the cantor before that, Craig Myers,
he's a
he's
rabbi.
Also JSLI. Oh, he's a rabbi. Sorry, JSLI.
Very similar situation to Ricky Lobel because he's a scholar. Like his knowledge is amazing, and he's a terrific teacher. You know, this lunch and learn that JSLI put once in a while, and I went to one of his teachings, and the guy was outstanding. The way he teaches is a real treat.
You were raving about it to me, and I still haven't had an opportunity to check him out, but I thought he did a beautiful rendition there, very understated, very perfect for the beginning of chapter 4 there. Tell me something. Was he in the class? He wasn't in our class. Was he in the class the year after us?
Yes.
When did he graduate, Smicha, from JSLI?
Yeah, right after us. Yeah.
Amazing.
That's why I went to his lunch and learn because we had a little overlap.
Right. So his class would be the class that was between when you and I got smicha and when Rabbi Alan Finkel of Temple Shalom got his smicha.
That's correct.
Very cool. All part of the big JSLA family, which has over, I believe, 100 rabbis since it was started 13 years ago, I think, by our teacher, Rabbi Stephen Blaine.
Incredible, huh?
Did you try to get Rabbi Blaine for this thing? Did he say no?
No. I didn't try. Oh. I'm saving him for another one.
Very good. Well, he was in the Shavuot concert as well. Yeah. We have one chapter left.
But before that, Ricky here, she sent a message about the reverse letters.
The ayin and the pei that I brought up.
Rabbi
which,
Ricky says that some teach that the reversal reminds us that much of our sorrow comes from when the spies put their pei, right, their mouth, their pei, spreading false words with their mouth, right, before their ayin, their eyes that show the truth.
That is a wicked teaching. I like that. I like that a lot. Kudos, Yashir Kochach to you, Rabbi Ricky. So this is what I was talking about. Another great contribution from JSLI and specifically from our class. That was very, very cool. But I told you, it's weird that there's the ayin and pei flip, and that's a great explanation. I love that.
Any comments to Rabbi Claudio's words?
Well, I feel like I don't really want to say anything until because of what's coming next, right? You mentioned that Rabbi Claudio is in Saskatoon, Rabbi Jeremy is in Regina. They have a relationship. They work together, and they kind of took different approaches to the same sort of idea, the same word, right? The big thing for Rabbi Claudio was Eicha and Eicha, right? That call to Adam in the Garden of Eden, that very famous call from the beginning of Bereshit. But without giving too much away, Rabbi Jeremy has his own little take, and he and Claudio may have to have a conversation after this one.
So Rabbi Jeremy Parnes, and immediately after, chapter 5.
A reflection on Eicha, Lamentations, for Tisha BeAv. There are moments in the affairs of humanity that are tragic, but can also serve to focus us. The scar of the temple was such a moment. Then it was a bloody, painful, gut-wrenching gash. Over time, the gash became a wound, became a scab, became a scar. And with time, with its passing, a dim memory. Today, we are many generations removed from that moment. And yet, in the interim, there have been many more gashes, many more scars. Like a hand-woven tapestry, the Jewish threads weft across the loom of life. Each year a new layer, each year covering the surface both smooth and rough, and each year leaving the scars ever present, like a flaw, a slub in the fabric. As we weave another layer, the pain diminishes, but the scar will never be gone. It serves as a reminder every year at this time, a cautionary note, to tread a little more lightly, to be a little more mindful, and resolve to be a little gentler toward each other. Above all, let it serve to strengthen our resolve to build out of our ruins a better relationship with ourselves, with each other, and with the world. Not Eicha, how come? Not Ayeka, where are you? But Nihyeh, we will.
זכור אדוני מהיה לנו הבית וראה את חרפתנו נחלתנו נאפך לזרים בתינו לנוכרים יתומים היינו ואין אב אמותינו כאלמנות ממנו וכסף שתינו אצלנו במחיר יבואו על צווארנו נרדפנו יגענו ולא הונח לנו מצרים נתנו יד אשור לסבוע לכם אבותינו חטאו ואינם ואנחנו עוונותיהם סבלנו עבדים משלובנו פורק אין מידם בנפשנו נביא לחמנו מפני
חרב המדבר. הורינו כתנור נחמרו מפני זל עפות רעב. נשים וציון עינו בתולות וערי יהודה.
שרים בידם נתלו, פני זקנים לא נהדרו, בחורים תחון נשאו, ונערים בעץ כשלו. זקנים משוש שבתו, בחורים מנגינתם. שבת משוש ליבנו, נהפך לאבל מחולנו. נפלה טרת ראשנו, אוי נא לנו כי חטאנו. על זה היד אבל ליבנו, על אלה חשו עינינו. על הר ציון ששמם, שאולים הלכו בו. אתה אדוני לעולם תשב, כי שכה לדור ודור. למה לנצח תשכחנו, תעזבנו ליורך ימים. השיבנו אדוני אליך ונשובה, קדש ימינו מקדם. כי מעוז מסתנו, קצבת עלינו עד מאוד. השיבנו אדוני אליך ונשובה, קדש ימינו כקדם.
And so Megillat Eicha ends with a repetition of the second last verse. This is something that we've seen actually. We do this with the book of Isaiah, with the book of Malachi, which make Haftarot, and we do it here with Megillat Eicha. And I think, I don't know, it's a stretch. I think it's pretty safe to say that is the most famous pasuk, the most famous verse in this entire Megillah. It made its way into our liturgy, into our machzor, for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Hashivenu, right? And so it's very powerful, but it's also, for me, Anibal, I know you were trying to infuse a little bit of hope in some of your earlier comments, but for me, the Megillat Eicha, this entire book, there really isn't a lot of hope, at least certainly on the surface level. That final feeling, the way the book ends, for truly you have rejected us, bitterly raged against us. Take us back. I mean, we expect God to take us back. That's Jewish tradition. That's Jewish teaching.
Yeah.
But the way that Eicha ends, it's kind of left up in the air, my friend.
But it's interesting because there is I read about this rabbinic tension between going back to God. So because Eicha is almost begging God to, so God, you make the first step, right? Reach me, and then I will go to you. But there is another verse in the book of Malachi that is all the opposite, that God says to the people of Israel, return to me and I will return to you. So there is the tension. Who has to return first to who? So I read this explanation from even Ezra that is trying to put the two together, that basically in Eicha, when it said bring us back, he's talking about physically, bring us back to Jerusalem. That's what we need from you, and then we will return to you. So it's trying to put the two ideas.
It's what you're describing is something I think a lot of people can relate to. Haven't we all been in a situation where we've been in a disagreement with another person and we want to work it out, but I'm not going to pick up the phone and call him. He's going to have to call me. And he's saying, I'm not going to pick up the phone and call him. He's going to have to call me. Sometimes if that's the situation and both sides are too proud to take that first move, you never resolve it. But we'll have to see. You know, we had two readers there. Our second reader, our colleague, Rina Sector Elbaz, I think it was also, much like we talked about with Barb Neiman, the first time she ever heard or worked with Eicha Trope was for this project. as well. And she just did a very phenomenal job, confident. Her voice just really fit absolutely beautifully. So Yasher Kochech, Kol Hakavod. Great job, Rena, with your first Eicha. And you got the final Berk. That's pretty good. We don't just give that to anybody.
That's true. And the other cantor, Pablo Dueck, he's from Argentina. He lives in California, Thousand Oaks. And yeah, I also met him later on. I never knew him in Argentina.
Well, he did a fantastic job as well. As for the introduction from Jeremy Parnas, first of all, that accent is pretty strange for a guy from North Battleford, Saskatchewan, wouldn't you say? I'm just kidding. Obviously, he's British, but it's very interesting. That's true. He took a different take from Rabbi Claudio, right? Saying it isn't Eicha or Eicha. But what did he say?
Nihye. We will. It's yeah. But it's also he's not contradicting. He took it to the next level. Let's put it that way.
Of course, absolutely. Different takes from the same thing. That's what it's all about for being different, for being rabbis. I mean, one of the things from our panel earlier today was trying to find places to put hope. And I think that's part of what Rabbi Jeremy, but also what Rabbi Claudio were doing with their comments there. All in all, Rabbi Anibal, this was a fantastic. I mean, we talked about it for several weeks. Eicha is not something that you're ever supposed to look forward to. We count down to Tisha B'Av, but we never look forward to it. Yet I've been looking forward to this really special and powerful way of presenting Megillat Eicha. I hope a lot of the people who've been tuned in enjoyed it. And if anyone missed any part of it, it's going to be rebroadcast tomorrow morning after Shacharit with Leslie Emery, who was one of our readers.
Yep. So, and this complete session with our comments, because tomorrow morning is going to be a straightforward reading. It's going to be commentary, chapter, without our insights, right? But if you want to replay this one, it's going to stay there on YouTube and Facebook, so you can always replay this one with all our comments, our sense of humor, I guess.
Which is maybe, I mean, we're trying to lighten the mood, I suppose, but this really is the beginning of Tisha B'Av, and it's supposed to be, on the floor, dimly lit, tears in our eyes, and seeing the words here as we followed along, like we talked about at the beginning, a lament for all Jewish catastrophes. I do want to offer, though, a Yasher Koach to you, my partner, Rabbi Mas, for putting this whole thing together, for putting all the videos together, for adding all the captions, for reaching out to so many of our readers. You really did an amazing job. It started just with an idea, and I'm just so proud of what you were able to do to turn it into the final product. So, Yasher Koach to you.
It was very exciting, and also to reconnect with some of the people that participated.
What a very special way for a special day, but for a difficult day. So I guess we should thank everybody for tuning in. Wish them an easy fast for Tisha B'Av. Services tomorrow morning, 7:30. Tomorrow night at 6. And when sun sets tomorrow, the fast and Tisha B'Av will be over, and we can move on, starting the countdown, 7 weeks to Rosh Hashanah. We've got a lot of work to do.
Eicha.
Very good. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi Leibel. Thank you, everybody, from tuning in. It's great to have you there. Bye for now. Good night.